Tuesday.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship.
Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, our first event of the evening is a one-fall match with a 15-minute time limit.
There ain't nobody in wrestling who can make me quit. And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
Tuesday.
We are what wrestling's all about. New York City here, Chicago here, Jamie on my left, Linda on my right. But I'm not telling any of the girls who I'm gonna give it to in Chicago until that night.
Tuesday, Wrestling. Tuesday returns to Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app.
Glad that you're with me for Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday right here on ESPN 1000, the ESPN app, of course, Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday, the podcast. Glad that you are with me here. We've got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of stuff that's going on from this past weekend in wrestling, and a special interview with Brian Pillman Jr. of MLW. MLW has a big show taking place in the Chicagoland area at Cicero Stadium. Go to MLWtickets.com. But let's hear from Brian Pillman Jr. And then on the other side, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on as far as the world of professional wrestling. But first, Brian Pillman Jr. of MLW right here on Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday. Glad you're with us here for Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday right here on ESPN Radio and, of course, the Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday podcast. Jonathan Hood with you, telling you about MLW. It's finally here. It's coming to Chicago at the Cicero Stadium. MLW Kings of Coliseum. 7 o'clock start on Saturday. Get your tickets at MLWtix.com. We're pleased to be joined by one of the members of the new Hart Foundation, Brian Pillman Jr. He's with me, Jonathan Hood, right here on Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday. Brian, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
How's everybody doing today?
Everybody's fine, man. How's life for you? How's life right now?
Life's great. I'm just getting up, in my usual routine of royalty, and eating some breakfast here. And I'm just getting prepared. Every day is a preparation. Every day is a challenge and a trial to get my body in shape and to get it recovered for the next week, for the next deal of business. And I think this weekend we got the biggest deal of business and perhaps a long time in my career. We got a big deal coming up here in Chicago, which when you're in Chicago, it's time to deliver. It's the real deal. Chicago has the greatest wrestling fans in the world, which, as we've seen after selling out Cicero Stadium, 2 or 3 times already.
Right.
It's just one of those things where it's big league shit. It's major league shit. Excuse my French.
It is.
We can blurt that out.
No, speak your mind, man. Speak your mind. It's the dynasty against the Hart Foundation.
It's major league wrestling. You're in the major leagues. I've always felt this way about these opportunities and about this company. And the fact that they're giving away tickets, they're basically giving tickets out for free if they're only $10. If it costs only $10 to come and see me and the Hart Foundation wrestle, then something's right with the world, because somebody up there is giving out free tickets to these fans, and these fans deserve it, because, like I said, they've been showing up and they've been showing out. To me and Teddy Hart and Davey Boy Smith Jr., we are MLW. MLW is the Hart Foundation show. So if you haven't noticed that in the last few tapings, then you're living under a rock.
Every time I watch you, I can see that you're having fun, Brian. You're having really a lot of fun in the business. How much fun are you having being with the other members of the Hart Foundation?
Oh, well, it's the perfect storm. We might even be having too much fun, So who knows if we're having too much fun, because this company, they put us together. They didn't know what to expect. They didn't know it was going to take off like this. They didn't know the whole world was going to go on its head, It was just what started off as a good idea, or perhaps a bad idea, quickly turned into the greatest thing that wrestling has seen in probably at least 10 years. So it's one of those things where, you feel like you're making history every time you step outside the house. You know, you get in your car, you turn on your car, you go to the show, or you take the airplane, you fly in, and you get off the jet bridge, and you get ready for your MLW tapings, and you're already making history. So it's just been a pretty wild ride. We got most of the gold in our hands, but Hammerstone, God bless him, he's the only member of the dynasty that I have any respect for, because I've been in the ring with him. I've been in the ring with all three of them, and he's the only guy that can really hold his own. He's the only guy that really beat me on his own merit, on his own physicality. And that's all right, you know. That's completely fine. I haven't been in this business long enough to claim that I'm unbeatable, to claim that I'm infallible. But at the end of the day, I know it's my destiny. I know that I am bound to be holding the national openweight title. I am bound to be bringing the gold back to the Hart Foundation.
Brian Pillman Jr. with Jonathan Hood on Tuesday, Wrestling Tuesday. MLWtickets.com. MLWtix.com is where you get your tickets. Saturday, 7 o'clock this Saturday at the Cicero Stadium in Chicago for the MLW Kings of Coliseum. Brian, what are your thoughts on the state of MLW? How is business, do you think?
I think business is pretty wild right now. I think there's a lot of struggle going on between, the power, and everybody's trying to control this powerhouse of MLW. There's so many guys that got their hands in this, and everybody wants to get their hands on the new Hart Foundation. Every company in the world, but the only company that has it, the only company that has the exclusivity of New Hart Foundation is MLW, and that's the thing. We're just a big ticking time bomb, and one of these moments, somebody's going to explode. Somebody's going to blow up. And it's going to be on an MLW pay-per-view. It's going to be on an MLW screen. Something's going to happen. Something that wasn't planned, something that nobody expected, and it's going to shake the wrestling business. I'm not going to say I'm going to be the one to do it. I didn't say that. But hey, you know what? I follow my father's footsteps. I might be something I need to say. It might be something I need to do to create some buzz, because it's only going to get bigger from here. It can only get bigger from here. Where do we go from here? That's the question. Once we've reached such this pinnacle of entertainment, not only in the level of the matches that we're putting on, the high level of that, but in the level of nostalgia, the level of respect that we pay to this business. How far can we go? How far can MLW go to contain these wild animals that they're holding on to? So, one of these days, you're going to see it, and MLW is going to witness it. It's going to be something great, and you're not going to want to miss this weekend, because they've got Brian Pillman Jr. and Teddy Hart versus the Dynasty, and they've got us in a ladder match. I've never been involved with ladders. I can tell you right now, Teddy Hart has. Teddy Hart is the master of ladders, and if I've got anybody in my corner with me to protect me from a ladder, I'm glad it's Teddy Hart.
Brian, this is your first ladder match?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Have you talked to Teddy about advice on how to survive a ladder match?
Yes, he said, and I'll kind of quote him here. He said, Brian, if you want to make your father proud, you gotta go to the top of the ladder, Brian. So you can't be doing this half-ass pussy pudding shit. You gotta go to the top. You gotta go to the top, and you gotta show them that you can fly. And if you can fly, Brian, that'll make my heart sober. And that's how he said it. That's what he said.
That's what he said.
I might be going off the top. I might be doing something pretty cray-cray. But there's only one way to find out, and that means you got to tune into MLW Saturday.
That's
Chicago, Cicero Stadium, the place that we always sell out. Over 2,000 people. Never a disappointment from the fans ever.
When you watch your father's work in WCW or in the WWF back in the day, what stands out most about his work that you really loved?
I think you kind of said it earlier. It's just knowing myself and knowing him and kind of connecting those dots. I get that question a lot, and it always kind of changes in my head. But like you said earlier, he's always having fun. He's always out there. He's doing what he loves. And I can feel that too, because I walk around the house and I'm wrestling my dog and I'm wrestling my girlfriend. Luckily, she's a worker, but I'm wrestling around. I'm wrestling people at the gym. I'm always wrestling. I'm a wrestler, So when I'm out there, I'm having fun, and it's because you know what? I bet my dad was having fun too. We're not out there overthinking it. We're not out there trying to over-strategize our opponents, because we know that it's in my blood. So I go out there and have fun and kick some ass. I think I'm going to come out on top of this business one day.
Brian, there's got to be a story of you, Teddy, and Davey being out on the road. When you three are on the road, the Hart Foundation's on the road, there's got to be something that you got to tell us. It's got to be a story of you three, right?
Oh, yeah, well, I can't spoil anything there because I don't know if those stories are allowed to be said at this time. Maybe we'll wait till down the road when I'm old and gray. We can do a podcast. We'll talk about all the shenanigans. But right now, we got to preserve the stockholders and keep them invested. So we don't want to expose too much of our fun that goes on at MLW.
What is this? Everybody's got goals. We all have goals. Do you have something in mind that you haven't done yet that you really want to do?
For the biggest time, I've never been confident enough to really say that I'm. I'll put it this way: I look into this business, and I've always been looked at as Pillman Jr. Pillman's kid. So I want to get to that level of respect where I can hold a championship with all the respect in the world without it being compared to my father. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I guess does Davey and Teddy
all the way?
Yeah. Does Davey and Teddy feel the same?
My peers and my colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Huh? Does Davey and Teddy feel the same?
I think Davey and Teddy have had similar trials and tribulations as I have, maybe earlier on in their career. But I think where they've gotten at this point is just kind of looking towards the future for me is they've earned that respect, right? They've earned the respect to hold those belts without any shadows, without any demons haunting them, right? They've paid their dues. They've been all over the world. So I'm just now making my name. And as far as I'm concerned, it's working. Whatever we're doing is working. Whatever we're doing at MLW is gaining me the respect that I need to become the real champion that I am.
I would like for you to just give me a scouting report on some of the other matches on the card. I mean, it's going to be I think it's a great card with the Hart Foundation against the Dynasty in a ladder match for the World Tag Team Championships. But your guy, Davey Boy Smith Jr. against Alex Hammerstone, I think that's going to be a great national open weight title match.
Yeah, and if anybody can do it, it can be hairy. My biggest issue. I was perfectly prepared and strategized for Hammerstone. As you can see during the match, I was in some of the best shape of my life going into that physically. Just got back from England, so my technical wrestling was above all very high level at that time. But as you can see during the match, I went for an early pinfall, and I tried to steal it too soon. Tried to steal the match too soon, and that was a rookie mistake. Also, I took a few too many risks, and took a dive to the outside, and I think I beat myself in that match. I think I took a lot of risks, being young and inexperienced, and I beat myself when it came to Alex Hammerstone. Now, when it comes to Davey Boy Smith Jr., I think that's a different story. I think that's a story of a wrestler that's very experienced, very grounded in his offense, and doesn't need to take the unnecessary risks, right?
Right.
Because he has the weight advantage, he has the power advantage on Hammerstone, where I didn't necessarily, I might have been a little outweighed, a little outpowered in that matchup that I had to take those risks, if that makes sense. But that's what you have to deal with when it's an open weight title, right? It's not a middleweight. It's not a heavyweight. This is a no weight bar. This is a very, very extreme, very serious title that can only be held by the most properly executed wrestler, right?
Right.
Like, they have to take whatever their weight class is and do it to the fullest. And the bigger guys are just going to have an easier time. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The Von Erichs against Contra, if the Hart Foundation is the coolest faction, Contra seems like it's really the most dangerous. So Contra against the Von Erichs, how do you see that unsanctioned match?
Yeah, that's one of those things where, unfortunately, the Von Erichs are in tough water. It's very unfortunate that their match will be unsanctioned, that they just came into the company, and we're trying to build them up as kind of in the same kind of ballpark as the Hart Foundation. You know, we're trying to show off that we are more than our legacies might entail. You know, and these guys have a huge opportunity within MLW to showcase what they really are worth. You know, they're not just the Von Erichs kids. You know, we're all a lot more than that. We have a lot to offer. But I think this will be a huge test. If they can make it through Contra, because hell, I don't even want to deal with Contra. Those guys are just bad. Those guys are just some bad men. And if they can make it through Contra, then I'll have the greatest respect for them, because that has got to be the greatest trial that anyone would ever have to face at any point in time ever. So I'm just counting my blessings that I don't have to have an unsanctioned match against Contra. Because at that point, if the match is unsanctioned and Contra's bringing out the things they're bringing out, I'm going to have to bring out the firearms. You know, I'm going to have to bring out the big guns. And I don't say that lightly, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I do.
Put it this way. I don't call 911. So, you bring Contra into the mix, well, I got a good friend. His name's 9mm.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be my tag team partner one time. I told him, not yet.
Not yet.
Good time for that.
The world title with Filthy Tom Lawler against Jacob Fatu, another member of Contra. This is going to be a very interesting match. I think Lawler's done a nice job really representing the company well as a heavyweight champion. What do you say?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We need him to stay the champion. He solidifies, he legitimizes MLW. So I'm definitely on his side. I'm definitely rooting for Tom Lawler, big mentor, friend of mine. But as we've stated before, these guys don't play by the rules, right? You know, Fatu's not coming in there as a martial artist. He's not coming in there. He's not going to do anything that Tom is going to be able to predict. He's going to be doing things that are unpredictable. He's going to be very, very vicious and very anti-martial art, very sloppy by Tom's standards, and he's not going to be ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Lawler and Fatu.
Yeah, he's going to be. Tom's going to be trying to read his body language and try to read the scenario, and Fatu's just going to be throwing curveballs left and right, because that's just not how those guys fight. You know?
Right.
You never see a 250-pound man do a moonsault. You know, it's the craziest thing. And that's what Fatu does, you know. So you got to be ready for that. You got to be ready for physics to go out the window. Because I don't know how the hell they do it.
So, again, MLWTix.com is where you go for your tickets. It's going to take place this Saturday.
MLW tickets. I mean, Jesus Christ, $10? Jesus, I might buy one just to say I did. Because they're so cheap.
Cicero Stadium in Chicago.
I'm probably on the tickets. You get a little picture of me, I'll sign it. You know, I don't even know why we're doing this, because the last couple of times they were sold out. So, really, we should just be telling you guys to hurry up and get your tickets.
Right.
Because they're already going to be sold out. We don't even really need to sell anymore. Because that's how fucking badass this is about to be. Excuse my language again. Leave that out, too.
MLW Kings of Coliseum. Get your tickets. Again, it's going to be a hot crowd. I will be there. We want you to be there as well. Brian, as always, this has been my pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to Saturday in Chicago.
God bless you. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. Great conversation with Brian Pillman Jr. for the MLW show that's going to take place at the Cicero Stadium in Chicagoland. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be there this Saturday night for MLW's TV taping, Kings of the Coliseum. It should be a lot of fun. There's a lot of things to talk about here, especially from last weekend's action. I'd like to remind you to just follow us on Twitter, twitter.com, Wrestling TWT. Tell people about it too. Don't be so selfish. Tell people about Wrestling TWT, where you can follow us on Twitter. The same thing as Instagram, Wrestling TWT. We have an Instagram, instagram.com, Wrestling TWT. And of course, our podcast, wherever you download your podcast, you can find Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday. Let me get into FyterFest for a moment because, wrestling is odd. This is one of the reasons why that we're into it. We want to be entertained. We want to be excited about something in professional wrestling. This is why we watch, right? This is why we're fans. But wrestling can be very mercurial in several ways. One way I know for sure is that we can look at a chair shot that Cody Rhodes took and say, boy, that's dangerous. But yet a lot of us are connected to IWA Mid-South or some of these other independent organizations that will use light tubes and chairs and crazy things and say, well, that's cool. It's it's very strange, the wrestling community, okay, something that's really, really dangerous and it could be death-defying. That's cool, but the chair shot, that's over the top because we are so, we really know so much about CTE now when it comes to concussions. So here's why wrestling can be odd. You and I both know that we're watching a show. But also, I think a lot of us look at professional wrestling and feel, hey, you know what? We know we're watching a show, but don't tell us we're watching a show. Let us suspend disbelief. That's not what the Young Bucks did, because for those of you that did not see this, so Cody Rhodes takes on Darby Allin, and after the match, the old Ty Dillinger, Sean Spears, comes in and waylays Cody Rhodes with a chair. Cody Rhodes is busted open. You can see it in his hair, in the back of his head. So he's bleeding. He had to have staples, no concussion, but he had to have staples put in his head after that chair shot. And people were really, really concerned for Cody, and people are saying, shouldn't have these unprotected chair shots, all these kind of things. Well, listen, I've been watching wrestling for a long time. I've seen unprotected chair shots, protected chair shots. All of it's dangerous, all of it. But Cody Rhodes and Sean Spears and probably Darby Allin and everybody else at AEW felt at the time that this is the right thing to do to try to get Sean Spears over as a dangerous individual. Well, here's what I'm talking about as far as suspending disbelief. 12 staples to the back of the head. That should be the story. But the Young Bucks, after FyterFest, want to tell you about what happened from their point of view. Listen.
But even the visual of it, is there any process that you guys take in determining? Okay,
oh yeah, that was all Cody's idea. I didn't even know what happened, to be honest. All I know is he did get staples. So I
12 staples.
I'm gonna have to look back and I'll have a comment on it later. So I don't even know, but I do know that they gimmicked the chair, and it clearly didn't work, right? Because he was bloody. So I don't know. Yeah.
Really? They gimmicked the chair. These guys are vice presidents of the company. Why even let the media in on what they did? Now, listen, you and I both know that the chair was supposed to be gimmicked, but why say that out front? This is why wrestling could be kind of strange, right? You and I both know what goes into the process because there's been so many wrestlers and people behind the scenes that have told us what goes into the process of trying to start an angle, or when there's a chair shot, what's supposed to happen, what needs to be safe, what needs to really resonate with the audience. Why would the Young Bucks, a couple of guys that are front and center in the company, tell the media and tell us, oh, well, the chair was supposed to be gimmicked. The chair was supposed to be gimmicked, so I don't know what happened there. I didn't really see what happened. Really? I don't think that that's something that you and I need to hear out front. Listen, you and I both know there's no Santa Claus. But when we see him, we're in on it. Like, oh, there's Santa Claus. So it's the same thing with the gimmick chair. Why tell people that it was a gimmick chair and something that went wrong? Just weird. It's very strange. Cody Rhodes going to that draw with Darby Allin was one of the best matches on FyterFest. But here's the thing that I have a disconnect with. Darby Allin was taking a lot of bumps. I think he got himself over. I think Cody Rhodes, one of the few times, by the way, that Cody Rhodes the bigger man in a match. That was a little bit of I got thrown off by that a little bit because you usually see Cody as a smaller man, but Cody was bigger than Darby Allin, and Darby Allin took a lot of bumps, a lot of unnecessary bumps, but he got himself over. I thought that it told a great story. Here's the thing that was not emphasized. Let me get to the announcing. You know that I've had Jim Ross on this podcast and a lot of my platforms for a long time. Jim Ross was with Excalibur and Golden Boy. I believe that was a 3-man booth at FyterFest. I don't know who Golden Boy is. I have a problem with Cody Rhodes wrestling to a time limit draw and it's not being expressed by the announcers. Without even asking Jim, without even texting Jim, I'm going to assume that that was his finish. Because how often have you heard on the Ross Report or in interviews that Jim has done and say, what's wrong with a draw? What's wrong with a draw? Why can't they have a draw? Because that tells a story too. And so it does not surprise me if this is Jim's finish where he wanted to see a time limit draw. Yeah, people were like, yeah, I want 5 more minutes, because we don't see draws in the United States very often. And maybe you see it in New Japan some, but you don't see it in America very often. So the story was, man, Darby Allin lasted 20 minutes or whatever the hell it was with Cody Rhodes. It was not emphasized in the broadcast. Which brings me to the broadcast. And I tweeted this out at Wrestling TWT on Saturday night. Dude, somebody's got to do play-by-play and somebody's got to do color. And I don't understand why Excalibur is doing almost 80% of the play-by-play. There are so many moves. This is the first time I think I've said this. There are so many moves that have names that are not the finish in 2019. I mean, I don't care if you're watching ROH. I don't care if you're watching MLW. I don't care if you're watching some of these other promotions around the country and around the world. There are so many names. Like, this is this move, this is this move, but none of it's a finish. Excalibur knows every move of all of these wrestlers, but none of them are the finish move. It's always the names of these other things. Now, I don't think everything needs to have a name, but clearly these wrestlers have been able to put the time in to execute these moves and put a name on it. It's cool. But I just think that if Jim Ross is the play-by-play man, Jim Ross needs to be able to tell that story and to be able to accentuate the high spots in these matches instead of the color analyst. I don't understand this booth. I don't get it. And I don't know, maybe Ross and Excalibur needs to be the 1-2. I don't know who. And Golden Boy was fine. I think he was fine too. But you can't have 3 guys doing play-by-play. I'll tell you this one quick story. I was a play-by-play announcer for several local promotions in the Chicagoland area. And I was working with a guy, and I said, okay, let's do this commentary and here, let's lay out the matches and let's talk about it. And as I start talking about, like, hey, all right, so-and-so wrestler has someone in a side headlock, and it takes him over. And then the guy I'm working with starts doing all the play-by-play. And I'm like, wait, you're here to do color. You can't do my job and yours. I mean, and that's something that WWE does a great job of. If nothing else, you know who's doing play-by-play and you know who's being able to lock in the color. Whether or not you like the color analyst of Corey Graves or some of the other people that work in the WWE, at least the roles are defined. AEW needs to find out who's going to do play-by-play and who's going to do color. Because to me, it's confusing. And we hear a little bit of the story, and then we're hearing about 1 million different moves at 1 million miles an hour, and nobody's getting over. From the broadcast booth, nobody's getting over. And you know, as far as trying to tell great stories about the wrestlers, I don't get that. But anyway, so Then we get to Moxley and Janela. That was the main event at FyterFest, and that was crazy. But it was a good crazy. John Moxley feels like he's finally just reborn. He feels good. And Joey Janela is just like other matches I've seen, will just do the craziest things and take the craziest bumps. And the crowd chanting, "You sick fuck, you sick fuck." And it's just like, wow, it was amazing. It was a bump fest, and I thought that it was fun. Don't mess with John Moxley. That was my takeaway from that. That was great. I love the Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks against the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid. A lot of spots there. And there's so much of a wink to FyterFest, as far as so many people that are gamers that were there. I think that they enjoyed it too. I don't think it was so inside that it was a turnoff. I thought that it was great to see all 6 of those guys in the ring because you knew they were going to tear the house down. I just thought that it was very good, very well done. I look at Hangman Page against MJF, Jimmy Havoc, Jungle Boy. As good a match as I thought it was going to be. I thought that he once again, the promo is better than the match. MJF starts off and he just starts talking about all the nerds in attendance and getting heat and all that kind of stuff and mocking Bret Hart and all that. Just all of it's good. MJF is terrific. Here's the thing I wonder about Maxwell J. Friedman, and he's going to be on this MLW show coming up on Saturday as well. Here's a guy here that's setting the independent world on fire. All these other companies that he goes to, setting it on fire. MJF does an A+++ heel promo. Does MJF work as far as trying to get heat in 2019 when so many people are defiant? They're like, yeah, you know what? You can talk about me because you know what? You're right. Can he resonate with the audience as a whole? Not just, a little card here in Hammond, Indiana, a little card here in Boise, Idaho, a little card here in suburban Los Angeles. Is he able to garner heat, the kind of heat he's looking for in 2019? In 1985, that guy would have had all of his windows smashed out of his car, every rental car he's ever had. He'd have to look over his shoulder if he was in Puerto Rico, if he was in Mid-Atlantic, if he was in Dallas, if he was in even in New York in the WWF days. He would have to look over his shoulder. I know he's looking for that kind of heat, but can that kind of heat resonate with a wrestling audience of 2019? That's the question I would have. I mean, not just in small cards, as a whole for a big company like AEW or wherever else he's going to wrestle. Does it work? That's the big question. So I thought that FyterFest was good. It was not great. Obviously, the stuff beforehand, the buy-in, the Nakazawa, and this other guy that was in the buy-in. I don't understand. I don't understand why that was on television. There's been a lot of silly matches and like radio DJs versus managers from the past that was never on pay-per-view. Man Cow's been in the ring, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's a lot of room for that before you turn the cameras on. This should have not been on television. This hardcore match for the part of the buy-in, Alex Jabali and Nakazawa, I don't understand why that was on television. Keep in mind, you may like that silly shit, and that's fine. But I think that when you are trying to sell a new wrestling audience into what you're doing, saying, hey, we're a brand new company. Here's a free event for United States viewers on BR Live. You want to be able to put on your best face. And it's almost, if you go back to that Young Bucks press conference, it's almost like, we got to be more serious when we have our show in August. And we got to be more serious when we get to Turner. So we can't do that being the elite stuff. And they almost seemed disappointed. The librarian gimmick, that did not work with a bigger audience. Peter Avalon and Leva Bates, that didn't work against Allie. They try to shush the audience. It works I've seen it work in a smaller venue. It did not work in Daytona. It didn't work at all. That library gimmick is bad in front of a big audience, and this is the difference between working a small independent and working an event with a big crowd. Yeah, that was very lukewarm at best. So that was interesting. So I look at this company with AEW, and I'm not trying to be completely old school, because even though I've been watching this stuff since the late 70s, I understand that wrestling changes. It always evolves. And I just believe that when I'm watching AEW, if AEW, the way we see it now, the last couple of shows, if that's going to be on Turner, it's not going to last long. Because what really separates yourself from the WWE is when you're able to just present wrestling, have the best promos, have the best wrestling, have the best angles, have the best personalities, and let them shine. That's how you're going to beat the WWE, and not beat them saying you're going to be on Monday nights or you're going to be on Friday nights when SmackDown. That's not the goal. The goal is to be able to put up your best representation of professional wrestling. That's what AEW needs to do. And so I look forward to seeing the next shows for AEW, because, yes, it's still new and fresh, but I look forward to seeing how the angles evolve and move forward. That's the thing that's so important to me. Eric Bischoff is going to be part of the SmackDown crew. He's going to be heading up SmackDown just like Paul Heyman is with Raw. We did that on our special. If you haven't listened to that, go back to Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday. I did like an emergency podcast when that story came out last Monday. Eric Bischoff talked about how he is now involved with SmackDown, going back to the WWE, and apparently he's going to live in Connecticut. This is from 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff.
Well, it's not rumor and innuendo at this point. It's fact. First of all, I want to say thank you. I'm overwhelmed with the support and the positive response that I got on social media after WWE made the announcement that I'll be joining the team and getting involved with SmackDown. The amount of response I got, I knew I'd get response. I knew it'd probably be a lot, but I was absolutely overwhelmed by the nature of that response and how positive it was, and just the sheer volume of it all. I think people are really excited. I want to let everybody know the magnitude of this opportunity and the challenge and the commitment that goes along with it is not lost on me. You know, there's been a couple times over the last few days where I've been driving around on my truck or taking my dog for a hike and going, wow, this may be it's not maybe. This is the biggest opportunity I've ever had in this industry. Granted, when Bill Shaw made me, president of WCW, obviously that was a very, very big moment. But I was learning on the job there. I had nothing to lose there. I was taking a company in WCW that had never had turned $1 of profit, that was such a distant number two to WWF at that time that we weren't even really number two. Company that was fraught with a bad history and all kinds of internal issues. So I had nothing to lose. And in this situation, this is an entirely different ball game here. This is a very sophisticated company in WWE. There is a great team already in place. I mean, they're moving the SmackDown show to Fox Network, which is going to obviously have a lot of eyeballs on it in every way. So the magnitude of the opportunity is not lost on me. But I said this in a tweet. This is probably the only thing I'm really going to say beyond this is I mean this. I mean, I almost get a tear in my eye saying it. I'm honored. I'm humbled. And I cannot express, even here, because this is a different kind of excitement for me. I haven't felt this way maybe in forever, but for at least 20 years. This is a whole different ball game. And I honestly, Lori and I and my dog Nikki, we're going to load up our truck and we're heading out to Stanford, probably on the 10th or 11th of July. We're I mean, literally, we're going out there with the clothes on our back and some of it in boxes, and we're starting over from scratch. And
so the thoughts there from Eric Bischoff. So he's moving to Connecticut, and he is going to preside over SmackDown. I don't know what that means. As long as Vince McMahon has a heartbeat, it's still going to be his way. Unless there's something going on internally with WWE. And I will talk to you about that in our next episode of Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday. Because there are some theories that have been floated around that maybe you heard, maybe you have not heard. So we'll get into that in our next episode. But as I mentioned in our emergency podcast, again, you can go back and hear my thoughts about Heyman and Bischoff overseeing Raw and SmackDown respectively. You remember who Eric Bischoff is, and the resume speaks for itself. Had some success with WCW, did turn a profit, did turn things around. But then there's a lot of things that he let slip through the cracks. He was with TNA, had a say in TNA. His idea was to be able to have a faction, just like it was in WCW. And the TNA at one point had some of the greatest talent in the world at that time, young and old, veterans and young cats, and they still could not turn a profit. They still did not have enough good ideas to help that company be on the same footing as a WWE, even close to it. They still were a distant second because of some of their ideas. Not all, but some of their ideas kept TNA down. And a lot of that was on Eric Bischoff. And now he's back in the WWE. Why is this happening? We'll get into that a little bit later on. A disappointing crowd for ROH Best in the World. I only saw some of it because of my work schedule. I got to watch the rest of it during the 4th of July holiday. But Baltimore is a great wrestling city, and that, I didn't know if I expected to sell out, but I thought it'd be a little bit better crowd at the Maryland-Baltimore County Arena for ROH. ROH still provides some great wrestling action. They're always consistent when it comes to that. And I thought that this pay-per-view was good, not great, but their wrestling action is always steady. But I thought that on a Friday night for a pay-per-view, the ROH would be a little bit hotter crowd, maybe a little bit better action, but it's always very good, but it wasn't great. So ROH has still got some work to do, clearly. And they've always got terrific athletes coming across the country from New Japan, from the independent ranks. So it's always an interesting watch with ROH. So as I mentioned to you, we will have another Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday next Tuesday. That show will also not be on ESPN 1000 because I will not have a show on ESPN 1000 the 9th because it's All-Star Weekend for Major League Baseball. But you know what? That's why we have the podcast. So make sure that you subscribe. That way you never miss an episode of Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday right here. And please tell people about it. Do not be selfish. Tell people about Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday, please, because we are building something special. If you see who I'm following people from across the country and around the world that love professional wrestling in the UK, and of course in the United States, Canada, and other places as well. So I hope that you get a chance to follow along Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday with me, Jonathan Hood. And don't forget, it's on Instagram as well, Instagram.com/WrestlingTWT. Let me check my list here. FyterFest, let's see, ROH, Eric Bischoff, and our interview with Brian Pillman Jr. He's great. I hope to have him on again. All right, my friends, thanks so much for listening, and let's do it again next Tuesday. Another edition of Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday with me, Jonathan Hood. Talk to you soon. And now a little Mid-Atlantic for you. Here we go.